Just a quick question about power meters. There's a lot of new bike computers coming out that have like virtual power.
Right.
What do you feel about those?
The only one that I know of that we've tested was I think it's called iBike. It's sort of this
Right.
big thing on the front of the bike. And it wasn't all that reliable in terms of, we actually had the bike set up where you had an SRM on the bike and the iBike at the same time, and the numbers were not all that good. It somewhat depends on how much you really want to be able to use and analyze the information. A lot of the sort of cycling computers that are trying to incorporate some virtual version of power, it gives you the gist of what's going on in terms of power, but it's very difficult to really be able to dive into the information from a software and analysis standpoint and start planning and adjusting training off of it. The power meters that are working off of actual strain gauges in either the hub or the crank, and now there's a new one that's using a strain gauge in the pedal spindle, which we haven't really looked too closely at, but that has a lot of promise if it works. Those provide the strongest stream of constant data, which gives you a smaller percentage of error when you're working with that data. And when you start extrapolating over a month and over a year, when you're starting to make pretty big decisions about your training based on those numbers, and if the numbers are not right, it's hard to feel real confident about them. So personally, I prefer the power meters that actually run off strain gauges. I've seen how they work. The SRM service center is here at Colorado Springs, and I have a bunch of good friends over there who I've seen sides of those things, and they work.
Is it the software that you like? Is it because it interfaces with your?
It's how it's measuring. It's the fact that it's actually measuring the deflection of the mechanical parts as you're riding, as opposed to using a calculation to backtrack into power. Okay. So the other ones are taking things like the changes in air resistance or
right.
the vibration of the chain, and you're getting further and further away from where the power is actually produced. The pedal spindle, the hub, and the crank, that you're right there, and it's simply as you're pushing here, how far the one piece deflects away from the other is what they're measuring in terms of how much force you're producing and over how much time. So they're actually measuring that mechanically as opposed to virtually.
So going back to what we originally, the first question of the evening, when Bart was asking you about what to spend money on. So rather than spend a couple $100 on a cycle computer that has virtual power, you think it makes more sense to save up your money and get an SRM or a PowerTap hub? If you want to do power.
Right, but in a lot of ways, the answer is both. Because at the beginning, that cycling computer has a lot of functions and features that are going to help you get faster. And even though the power on that's available using that may not be as accurate for long-term use as an SRM or a PowerTap, it is not to be just sort of cast aside. And there's also nothing wrong with using heart rate with that the cycling computer has and the cadence function that it has. So it's more that it's a progression into the equipment. I certainly would not want somebody to think that they can't start training seriously until they've saved up thousands of dollars on a power meter, or that somehow without a power meter they can't be a real cyclist or something like that. It's not the be all and end all of being a proficient rider. It's a nice piece of equipment that if you have the means to afford one, it's worth it. More than, the question that was posed originally was kind of, if you had $10,000,
Right.
do you spend on a $9,000 bike and then a couple $100 here and there on everything else? It would be more like spend $3,000 or $4,000 on the bike and increase the quality level and range of the other things. So your wardrobe for cycling is all of the different layers that you need to be comfortable in all seasons. A power meter that gives you the data you need. Shoes that are going to be comfortable, all of that kind of stuff. The thing that people sometimes get caught up in is the brand new carbon frame or the $2,000 wheels. Especially the brand new $4,000 frame. The frame isn't going to do you. No offense to anybody in the shop, and no offense to me, I wouldn't know the difference between, the stiffest frame in the world and something that's half as stiff. Most of us can't tell the real difference.
Right.
A good, solid, well-made, quality frame is going to do you just fine, especially in the beginning. And so overspending on the frame at the very beginning to the deficit of all of everything else, that's where it starts to not make a whole lot of sense. Because you can always upgrade the frame. Once you have the power meter and the wheels, you get a new frame next year. And it's you build up that way. And most importantly, you're still in the sport because you enjoy it and you're getting better. As opposed to, I don't know how many people around the country have, $10,000 bikes that they don't ride anymore. Because they bought a $10,000 bike and never got faster and still don't go very fast. And it wasn't any fun because it wasn't comfortable, and all of those things that are not to be overlooked.
Okay, thanks.